Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to set up EC2 instance, deploy PostgreSQL on that EC2 instance, and then access it through a Postgres client called PgAdmin4. Alright, so I have created some guide here, and we are going to be using this guide throughout the process. Right, so the first thing we are going to do is to provision EC2 instance. So let me log into my AWS management console. My AWS account. So I have already logged into my AWS account, and this is my AWS management console. All right. So under recently visited services, you should see EC2. So if you don't see EC2, go and hit on EC2, right? So that should bring EC2 up, and then hit on EC2, navigate to instances, and then hit on instances, and then do launch instances. Make sure you are in your desired region, okay? I'm in US West 2, and that's my default region, okay? Make sure you are in your desired region. So I'll be using PostgreSQL-server as my server name, and then I'll hit on Ubuntu. And then under instance type, I'll be using T3 extra large, select T3 extra large. Then I will create a key pair because I don't already have a key pair for this. I'll call my key pair PostgreSQL-server-key, and then I'll hit on enter. So leave everything by default, okay? Hit on create key pair. And then under network settings, do edit. If you have a custom VPC that you are using, select your custom VPC, but I don't have any, so I'm going to be doing this in my default VPC, right? So I will leave it by default. I don't have any preferred subnet that I want to use, either no preferred availability zone. But just make sure you have auto assign public IP address enabled. That way you'll be able to remotely access your EC2 instance from your local, right? So I need to create a brand new security group for this demo. So I'll call my security group PostgreSQL-server-sg, and then I will come here and put remote access. All right. So I want to use this to remotely access my EC2 instance. Under inbound security group rule, I will leave it SSH because that's the first thing I want to use. On the source type, I will use my public IP. That way, I am the only person to access my EC2 instance remotely. All right. Now I will hit on launch instance. That should launch my instance. Now I'll hit on my instance ID. Okay. And that will take me to my instance profile. Go back to instances. And you should be able to see your instance profile. Now you can see that the status check on your EC2 is on initializing. All right. Now let's go grab our key pair and then put it in a location where we'll be using to access our EC2 instance. All right. So I'll open my terminal and I'll copy my EC2 instance in my download folder. Copy it from my download folder. I call it PostgreSQL, and then I will put it in my SSH location. Okay. Copy. Now let me navigate to my SSH folder. I'll be changing permission to that key pair. Let me change permission to only read, okay? To only read permissions. Postgres, right? Now, let's go back to our AWS management console. You can use this IP address to connect to your EC2 instance, but there is a very easy way to do this. Okay, let's hit on connect, and under SSH client, copy this string and go back to your terminal, put it there and hit enter. So that should prompt you to confirm. I'll type yes, and then I should log into my EC2 instance. Now I'm logged into my EC2 instance, right? The first thing we are going to do here is to change the host name of our instance. I like to do that. You must not do this, all right? So now let me change the host name, because first of all, if I type host name here, this should display the private IP address of your instance as your host name, right? But I want to change that, okay? I want to change this to something else. So I will use sudo hostname cdl, then I'll set my host name. I'll set my host name to PostgreSQL server, all right? So if I type host name again, you should see this host name that I set for this, all right? So let's bash, okay? Now you should see that our host name has changed from here to here, okay? Now let's go back to our guide and see what is the next step. The next step is to update and upgrade patches, right? So let's go to our terminal and then update and upgrade patches. So to do that, I will type sudo apt update -y and sudo apt full upgrade. I want to do full upgrade on this EC2 instance so that all my patches will be updated and upgraded, okay? Upgrade, right? -y. So let's wait for this to update and upgrade. All right. While our upgrade is going on, so let's navigate to our guide and see what we have as the next step. So the next step is to install PostgreSQL, okay? Now the upgrade is done, so let's install PostgreSQL. So let's navigate to Google and I'll type install PostgreSQL on Ubuntu, okay? So let's navigate to Postgres documentation, and in here you can read this guide on how to set up your Postgres, okay? In here you will see that we are using Ubuntu, right? So you should already have this for your Ubuntu. It's pretty easy to do this in Ubuntu, okay? So let's go back to our terminal and type sudo, then paste this. That way we should have the privileges to do that. So hit enter and do -y and then install Postgres. All right, so once installation is done, the next thing we need to do is to log into a default database through PostgreSQL, okay? So let's do that. All right, so the next thing we need to do is to log into Postgres database. The default database is Postgres and the default user is Postgres. Okay, let's log in through a client called PSQL, okay? So let's go ahead and log in. So let's issue this command, sudo -i means you want to change your privilege to root, and then we want to issue -u to the Postgres default user, and then we'll hit enter. I just have a typo there. Let's do a U here and hit enter, right? So now let's type PSQL, and then we are logged into Postgres, right? If I do list databases, then you see we only have this default database. These are databases that came out of the box with Postgres when you do Postgres installation, all right? Now let's go back to our guide and see the next step. Okay, the next step says create a user. So let's create a user, and we are going to create a user called person learn. Okay, let's do that. So I've already have the script written here. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here. And I'll explain it to you here. So create user, and I'll call the user PostgreSQL, and then with a password, and this is the password string that we are going to give. We'll give them this password. Make sure you return this password because we are going to need it to access our Postgres through a Postgres client called PgAdmin4, right? So let me hit enter. Okay, then the next thing on the list is to create the database. So let's create a database, right? We will create this database called person learn. So this is just how you create a database in Postgres database management system, right? So let's hit enter. So that creates a database for us, all right? The next thing on the list is to create tables, all right? So let me create a table. So we will create a table called customers. Let's create this table and we will call it customers. Now, let me hit enter. And you see, this has created a table called customers, but it has not created this table in a database called person learn. So the first thing we are going to do here is to first of all switch from Postgres to person learn database. And to do that, let me show you. All right, first of all, let's do list. So you should see that the database we created is part of the databases here. So I'm going to switch my database from Postgres to post underscore and underscore learn. Okay, so let's do that. So to do that, I'm going to type C and then I'll copy the name of my database and paste here. Okay, and hit enter. So that should connect me to my database. All right. In here, you should see that the database has changed from Postgres to post underscore and underscore learn. Right. So if I list tables, you are not going to see any tables in there. Okay. So there are no tables. Okay. There are no tables in there. Now let's create a table. Let's create a table in here and see what happens. Let's create a table. So the table has been created, and if I call back the command to show tables, we should see this table are created called customers. That's the table, right? But one thing you need to know here is we have created this user, but we've not granted them any permission to see anything. So what we need to do is to grant that user permissions to be able to see something, right? Right. So we are granting all privileges on a database called person learn to a user the user that we just created earlier. So let's hit enter. All right. All right. So one thing you need to understand is that in a database, in any database, when you create tables, what you need to do is insert data into those tables. Okay, this is pretty simple. And don't worry about understanding this, because when I connect to this PostgreSQL through a Postgres client called PgAdmin4, you'll be able to see all these tables that I'm talking about. All right. So we created a table earlier, and then let's go ahead and insert some data into that table. All right. Let's insert table into that, data into that table, right? So this has inserted up to 6 data, right, into that. So I will show you what this means, all right? Now, the next thing we need to do is to grant permission for this user to be able to see, delete, insert, and list tables on this database, okay? Let's hit enter. All right, so Now that completes our step 8. Okay. Now let's go ahead and adjust Postgres configuration. The reason why we need to adjust our Postgres configuration is to be able to access it through PgAdmin4, because if we don't do that, we are not going to be able to access it. So let me show you how to adjust those configurations. So I'll exit from my database and navigate to my Ubuntu user. And then the first thing we need to do is to change our directory to Postgres, and then keep going. PostgreSQL 16 main. Let me land here. Okay, let's list the content of this folder. So in this folder, we will be switching some configuration, right? I will show you what needs to be changed. So let me concatenate that file. That way you see the content of it, okay? HPA, HBA, sudo path, okay. And then I'm going to do grep. Let me type and grep something called -i, then something called listing. Okay. All right, so there is this address that we need to update. Okay, so let me go ahead and navigate to that. So I don't know how familiar you are with this Nano or VIM. Okay, those are tools that you can use to actually edit your file in Linux, right? So let's go ahead and edit that file. So I'll be using VIM to do this configuration. So I'll do pg_hba. Okay, and then I will search for listing, and I'll hit enter. All right, so that doesn't seem to be in this file. So I'll quit from this file and go to my postgres.conf file to edit that entry. It's a network entry, okay? So let's do sudo vi in here. I'll search for listing. All right, so let's change this to a wildcard, okay? This is a wildcard, meaning that you are allowing all the network or all the IP addresses to be able to access your database. And I want to emphasize here that do not do this kind of configuration in a database that has your critical information, okay? This is just for a test. Don't do this in a database that has critical information, all right? So I will save and quit. Now let's navigate back to the PgHPA.conf file and edit it. So there is a configuration that I need to add somewhere here. Let me type this, right? I want to type that. By the way, I can go up anywhere here and hit enter. So I'll type host. I'll type all on all of this entry. And then you can either set the public IP address of your EC2 instance or a .0.0.0/0 cider block here, okay? What that means is that you want to allow connection again from the internet to your database, and also do not do this in your Postgres database that has sensitive data, all right? So let's go ahead and put the 0.0.0.0/0 cider, and then put message digest 5. And then let's save that file. Then restart our PostgreSQL. Right now, let's do sudo. You can do sudo service, okay? Sudo service Postgres, okay? Restart. Sudo service. Restart. That will restart our Postgres service. And then we can do a status on that to see the status of our service. That is up and running. Now, the next thing on the list is to install PgAdmin4. All right, to install PgAdmin4, go ahead and navigate to your Chrome, open your Chrome, and type here install PgAdmin4, okay? Hit enter. So go to this, and you should be able to download it from here, okay? Download any release of your choice depending on your Windows or your own operating system features, right? I've already downloaded it for the purpose of, for the interest of time, and I'm going to go ahead and copy, open my PgAdmin4, and that should open my PgAdmin up, okay? Still loading. That is my PgAdmin4 still loading. And while this is loading, let me go ahead and copy the IP address of my EC2 instance, because we are going to be using the public IP address of the EC2 instance. Okay, so this should be the public IP address of my EC2 instance. Another thing you can use is this public DNS, either one, all right? But I'm going to be using this one, all right? So let's go back to our PgAdmin4. All right. The PgAdmin4 has opened, so when you download and install it, you should see this page, okay? Under this Add New Server, click on Add New Server, and then call the server name. I'm going to call it Pause and Learn. All right, and Learn. Then under Connections, I'll put the public IP address of my EC2 instance here. Like I said, you can put either the public DNS name or the public IP address of your EC2 instance, okay? Now, the next thing you need to do is to set the database. So remember, we created a database called Pause and Learn. So I'm going to go grab that database. Let me go grab the database, okay? If you don't know how to see the database, if you have forgotten the name of the database, let me show you how to access it. So let me do T, okay? Type sudo -u-i, then -u Postgres, okay? Hit enter. Then do PSQL, then do /L to list all the databases, and then copy this, go back to your PgAdmin4, paste, and then type the user. We created a user called Pause and Learn admin, okay? Pause admin, okay? Sorry, Pause admin, and we are going to paste the password here. Go ahead and copy the password you created. Remember, I told you to keep the password safe. That way, you'll be able to use it to access this. All right, let's paste the password here, and then save the password. You need to save this password so that you should not be prompted to use this password when next you want to access your database through PgAdmin4. All right, let's save it. Let's save it. Okay. So we are on this step 11. Okay, we are on step 11. All right, something is happening. Unable to connect to server, connection timeout. All right, so I know I have not enabled port. What port was that? 5432 on the security group. So we need to go allow that port. Okay, so let's go here and set that rule on our inbound rule on this firewall. So let's go click on edit inbound rules and then add a rule. I'm going to type here Postgres. Let's type Postgres, and this will issue us this port range, and I will use my public IP address to access that, hit enter. All right, now go back to your PgAdmin4 again, refresh, and then do save. Let's see if that will connect us to it. Now, it says connection to this server, but this failed. Database pause and learn does not exist. Let's check, guys. Let's check what name I gave to that database. Right, so let's check again. That name does not exist. Pause and learn. Okay. This name does not exist. Database pause and learn does not exist. So, all right. Let's do save and check again. Boom. Here we are connected. So let's go to our database and go to databases. You see we have two databases, right? Postgres and then Pause and Learn. So we are interested in Pause and Learn. So let's open up Pause and Learn, then go to schemas, and then you should have only one schema here, which is this public schema. All right. Then let's go to tables. You should see your one table that you created earlier on, which is customers. Okay, so if you click on this and then go to edit, view, edit data, and hit on all rules, you should be able to see your database that you created, not database, the table that you created with all the customers. All right, so this is how you set up a Postgres database in an EC2 instance and navigate through what is called Postgres PgAdmin4 rather. Now you can come in here and create database manually. If you have the permission to create a database, you can right click to this and you see you don't have permission to create a database. All right, so if you are granted permission to create a database by the Postgres default user, you should be able to create databases. Okay, so guys, this is how you set up a database. You deploy a database on an EC2 instance and access it through your PgAdmin4. All right, so that was it, guys. And if you have any question, put it on the comment section and I will be more than happy to answer your question. Please don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel, like my video, share it, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your time. Bye-bye.